Hello again, and welcome to our show on all things supplier diversity, brought to you by Remote Video Production. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, with ASL interpretation by Maple Communications Canada. And I'm so excited today to talk to someone that I really consider a friend. We're, I guess, acquaintance friends, we're work friends, but we end up on the same video chatting with each other often or on the phone. And so I really enjoyed getting to know her, but I'm super glad to have her here today because now I can ask some and find out a little bit more, maybe some personal questions or just get to know her a little better. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Kayla Maduk from Bell or Bell Canada. We've been talking about the best way to say it. Turns out you can say it either way. So Kayla, thank you so much for being here. I've heard Kayla talk about how she's a listener to our podcast, so I'm excited to have her on as a guest, and hoping you feel a little bit that way too, Kayla.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yes, I'm equally very excited to be part on this side of the podcast. It's I was telling the team earlier that it's so helpful for the corporates to have more content, whether that be learning from other corporates, from the certifying bodies, or even just from the suppliers to hear their stories. So very
Oh.
grateful to be on both sides.
Oh, well, that's great feedback to have, and I appreciate that. It's so cool when you learn about some of the little thing that you're doing or some little thing that you start off and it has far-reaching effects. So I do have that experience often with IWSCC, and I suppose I should mention that I'm Deidre Guy with the Inclusive Workplace and Supply Council of Canada, or our acronym will be IWSCC moving forward because it's a heck of a lot shorter. And what we do is we find and certify businesses that are owned either by veterans or by people with disabilities here in Canada. And we certify them as diverse business owners. And then we create opportunities for them to network with people like Kayla from Bell, because she's, well, as you're going to learn, she works in that area where she would be talking to our diverse suppliers. So that's kind of what we do. So Kayla, without taking up any more time, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing currently right now.
Yeah, so at Bell, I'm the Supplier Diversity Program Manager. So I would say that I wear probably multiple hats. So anything from strategic planning, like research, anything that we can put in place, different projects to help evolve the program, to managing the actual relationships with the certifying, councils, and working with the diverse suppliers as well, to the communications, mostly with a focus on advocacy, like awareness, education, and then obviously anything reporting that kind of falls under me in the team as well. And in general, I would say that my main job too is to work with our internal stakeholders as closely as possible, really to help shine a light on the certified diverse suppliers internally at Bell, and hoping to bring a little bit more visibility and access to opportunity.
So that sounds like a lot. Do you have a team? Are you on your own? How does that, do you have support? I mean, that sounds like a lot of work to me.
Yeah, it is. It's lots of fun. I think, like most
Yeah.
organizations, this program starts, small and then grows. So I'm very grateful and proud to say that I'm Bell's first full-time employee to this program, which is wonderful news. It's really, really great. I'm obviously supported by my senior manager, Debbie Resendez de Silva, and we have my team member who's working part-time, Eva Pereira, who is absolutely wonderful. So lots of work that our team is doing. It's not done alone by any means, and like none of the program would be possible without all of the champions and support of obviously Bell's procurement team and all the champions that we're kind of developing throughout Bell. It's a very big company, but as you know, even just for Bell's reputation, there's such a culture of inclusion, and so supplier diversity is a piece of it that I think is still newer to the company, but
Hmm.
as soon as people hear about it, they're like, oh, that just makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
kind of jump on board. So it's really a question of awareness and kind of increasing that engagement.
So it's kind of an easy sell once you get in front of the right
For sure.
people.
Yeah,
Well, that does make things a little bit easier then.
for sure.
And what led you to this? Because you're relatively new in this position, and so what did you do before, and why did you decide to take this on?
It's a good question. I kind of like stumbled across supplier diversity. I was a couple years in at Bell, started in more of the marketing space. But in terms of like my schooling, I did business. And ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to work in the diversity and inclusion space. And so when I came across supplier diversity, I was like, oh, again, easy sell. This makes a lot of sense. And I think it mixed like this beautiful match between business and economic growth and opportunity to like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so it kind of paired the two beautifully. And I absolutely fell in love with it. But yeah, like I'm sure we'll get into it later, but I think my background and kind of my like young adult life really influenced, I guess, my desire to work in this space in general. But it's always been a passion of mine.
And so I always like to ask this. I think of almost everyone that I have on the podcast who's related to supplier diversity. What is supplier diversity in your definition? What does it mean to you when someone says supplier diversity? What's your elevator pitch for supplier diversity in terms of what it is?
I think I see supplier diversity as twofold. I think of like the business case about supplier diversity. I really think about the fact that it is such a significant mutually beneficial business strategy for not only large, organizations, corporations, governments, but also the suppliers that are, being positively impacted. But I think I just love the depth of how it goes a layer further of supporting the communities that this economic growth and opportunity positively impacts as well. Like I think of Bell and the fact that supplier diversity, it's not only a huge value to us in enabling us more access to innovative concepts so that we can do better, products and services for our clients, but it also helps us better reflect and celebrate like our society's rich diversity and build more of an equitable and prosperous future for everyone from like a corporate standpoint and use our influence. That's one side. If I personally think about the human side of supplier diversity, I get blown away by all the stories that I hear from the certified diverse suppliers and their experiences. And I think about generational success and the potential for like social and economic progress that supplier diversity has to offer. And I really think about community because like no matter who I meet, whether it be on the corporate side or the supplier side, we're all working towards the same vision. And it feels really special to be a part of that.
Yeah. The stories are very cool, and it just does such an impact long term. And I love the fact that it's not like pandering. It's not a handout. It's not anything like that. It's companies choosing to spend their money that they're going to spend anyway. They're going to now spend it and make conscious decisions about how they spend their money and how does that have long term snowball effects. And that's something I talk about often on supplier diversity panels. Is that economic snowball that happens, that as a company who chooses to do business with diverse owned businesses may not even think about or see, but as that business grows, then they start to diversify their supply chain. They start to buy more things in general. They hire people within their same diversity group in many cases. So it really has this fantastic snowball effect that really it's not a handout in any way. I mean, these suppliers still have to work hard for what they're doing. Like everything has to be in place. They don't, it's not like, oh, okay, you're part of this marginalized group, so we're just going to hand you the work even though we think you can't do it. No, that's not the case. People have to go through the same rigor. So that's great. So Kayla, a little bit off track, and then we'll sort of get back onto the supplier diversity topic. But I just want to learn a little bit more about you as a human. I mean, you were away to Boston this weekend. I know you do lots of traveling, and so tell us a little bit more, something that's unique and kind of cool that you are or you do.
I would say that I'm a very like physically active person. I really love the outdoors. I've more recently got into endurance sports. But if I refer back to my childhood sports endeavors, it's kind of the opposite of what I did. I have a secret or a not so secret background in competitive sport. I did Taekwondo for 16 years, which is
gosh.
like kind of the opposite of an endurance athlete, but that's okay. And by the age, before the age of 20, I had competed in 3 world championships, winning 7 medals, 3 of which were gold. And so I guess my childhood and my young adult years were quite unique. And I think I lived a lot of highs in those years, and
Yeah.
sprinkled in, I also lived a lot of lows, and and so I think that the complexity of growing up and having a mix of experiences really shaped who I am today.
Yeah.
But that's my little secret, is my secret sports background.
Well, I had no idea I was going to uncover such a gem. And I don't know. I think I would argue with you about Taekwondo being endurance, but I've not done martial arts. My ex was very accomplished in Taijutsu, so I understood what it took for him to get to that point and be able to endure the hits and the punches and all the bruises and everything. That conditioning that you have to do. I mean that. I saw what he did. Like that wasn't easy either. So congratulations
No.
on. And so, what are you doing for endurance sports?
I would say like trail running, but like
Okay.
25 kilometers and more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead of competing for a few minutes at a time at a really, really high intensity, now
Yeah.
it's longer, out for 7 or 8 hours, and
Yeah.
enduring the nature's harsh realities.
Well, and that's so fun, and it's great on the body because you're using all different muscles. Anyways, I don't want to carry on about ranting on that, but I enjoy that too. I shouldn't say running so much as I get older, but certainly hanging out and going through, and was something I did. I grew up in the country, right? So that's one of the things we had to do out of maybe the four. So we did a lot of that.
That's
So
awesome.
listen, tell us a bit about Bell's supplier diversity program or initiatives, and some background on where it's at now.
Yeah, so Bell's program was established in 2014, and I'm really proud of where it's at now. There's people before me that worked on this program extremely hard, Debbie Resendez de Silva being one of them. And there's acknowledgement that we still have a lot of work to do, but I'm excited about the direction that we're taking. I think in the past few years, this year included, some of the things that we've been really focused on are optimizing our data, improving our reporting processes to kind of help with the longevity and the efficiencies of our program, as well as building our awareness and engagement of the program company-wide, as there's this kind of like new wave of excitement around it, and so we're trying to capitalize on that as much as possible. And I think on the other side of it, we're trying to help the certifying organizations and help other corporations also push the narrative of supplier diversity to help grow it in Canada. So the end of last year, we launched our Tier 2 reporting program. So working with a select group of our large Tier 1 suppliers and inviting them to support supplier diversity, or if they're already supporting, enhance their commitment. And, it helps, mutually keep each other accountable, but also help push the message forward, and do our best to collaborate with some of the certifying councils as well. We're constantly in a state of learning right now, and so we're very grateful to have the support of the certifying councils, as well as a lot of the other corporations that are constantly attending different events and sharing their experiences, because those moments are what's help us bring our program to the next level, little by little. And organizational change does not happen overnight, but it's going in a good direction.
Yeah, and that sounds great because you're doing sort of that almost grassroots approach, but top down, but still that's what we always talk to organizations about is, you have to work from the top, but you also have to make sure that everybody is aware of it and knows it and gets behind it. It just becomes a culture in the organization. And that's not easy to do, certainly with an animal as big as Bell Canada. So.
For sure.
But I think, and talking to the tier ones, and having them talk to the people they purchase from, I think is really important, because not all diverse suppliers are capable of doing business with an organization the size of Bell, but they can do business with who you do business with, who you buy your things from, or maybe who that company buys their things from, and hence the terminology for the tiers. So I asked you to come here on our podcast sort of as a result of a conversation you and I were having, one of our regular meetings, about the concept of third-party certification as part of the supplier diversity world versus a self-identification. So maybe if you can take a minute and just describe those two and what the difference is between them, so that so folks who aren't necessarily familiar with the supplier diversity world can understand better what we're talking about.
Yeah, so self-identification would represent, let's say, through a survey or through, let's say, a public directory, or it could just be, through self-declaration on an email of saying, "Hi, I'm woman-owned. This is me," and like that. That's it. It's kind of taking your word for it, I suppose, and difficult to get visibility to unless someone has gone out of their way, or if you have processes set in place to try and find these suppliers. The certification piece is really geared towards the certifying organizations and councils that are put in place that have criteria, processes, structures to actually go through the extra level of verifying and certifying these businesses as in fact being owned and controlled by whatever diversity type that organization represents. And so it really, for corporations at least, it allows that kind of level of security, legitimacy, and fairness when we're talking about supplier diversity. I think there's people that probably have different opinions on this. I like to think about third-party certification as the roadmap to longevity and growth of supplier diversity. I think, like anything really, without standardized criteria, consistent regulation, ethical processes, I think things become difficult to track, maintain, and to ensure kind of like the control and legitimacy of something. And so, for a variety of reasons, Bell is for certification. And I think it helps us in a wide variety of reasons. So again, I think it helps with better visibility to diverse-owned businesses. And I think it creates a community for the corporations and the certified diverse suppliers that are, part of this supplier diversity world. They're joined together by these certifying organizations. And then I also think from like a corporate standpoint, it kind of provides us like a rule book, guidelines, and framework, especially when it comes to reporting or even the projects that we put in place to expand our programs to the next level. It really helps us create kind of a standardized direction so that, we're approaching it in a way that is going to be helpful and it's going to provide that longevity. And we're going to be on par with the other corporations that are also participating so that we can kind of tackle supplier diversity as a joint unit and create that consistency just to contribute to this bigger picture that I think we're all working towards.
Okay, so that's a lot. And there's, I'm in the business of third-party certification. There's a couple things in there that I was like, okay, that makes sense, but isn't necessarily what I'd heard before. So I guess, as you said, it's safe to say that Bell chooses third-party certification. Was there a time when they did self-identification? And essentially the two is, you want to do work for Bell. They're like, and you say, I'm a diverse supplier, and they can either, or any given company can say, okay, we'll take you on your word that you are diverse and your business is 51% owned, operated by a diverse person. Or the other is, okay, what we would like you to do is go get certification through one of these certifying bodies. Or as a part of the certifying body, the supplier is then identified to you. So Bell has chosen to do the certification piece. Was that always the case? Do you know?
It was. Yeah, okay. And I think it's because when we started our supplier diversity journey, we leaned on the certifying councils on how to build a program. How do you go about this?
Of course.
Can you connect us? Where do we find diverse suppliers? Like when you're, especially at the beginning stages, it becomes really helpful to create that structure that's needed. One of the things that we're looking at is obviously the self-identified piece. There are either certain groups or certain mentalities, especially on the supplier side, which to a certain extent I understand that they either are not ready for certification because they themselves don't feel safe or prepared to self-identify publicly as being certified, which we want to be respectful of. And then there are also certain groups that might not feel the value or the need based on their business goals, based on their geographic location, based on the history that they feel with their identity, depending on what we're talking about. And so internally, we track self-identified spend. However, we treat it as a case-by-case basis, as an opportunity to kind of as an additional handout to be like, hey, did you know that certification exists? Did you know that these business tools exist for you to be able to add more value and, kind of get additional support from these organizations? Did you know that it exists? Let us connect you, and we'll take kind of a collaborative approach like that. We're not in the business necessarily of forcing businesses to self-identify and get a stamp, because I know that certain diversity groups, there's still stigma that exists, and we can't be forcing people. That doesn't work. And it's not ethical in that sense either. However, we do want to create a culture and a place where we can talk about it, encourage it, and by doing that, demonstrate that we celebrate certification. We want to be working with diverse businesses. So it's kind of this delicate dance between the two, because certification for us allows visibility, it allows our success stories, it helps us create a message and push something internally at Bell to keep building this culture. So it's a delicate dance. So we approach both, but when it comes to formal reporting, it will always be certified.
Certified, right? Okay.
Because we can count on it. I know for a fact that this is our spend.
Yeah, exactly. Because those people have gone through the rigor of getting certified with one of the supplier councils. Yeah, and I mean this. There's so much stigma, and that's the reason we even have these councils in the first place, right? Is because there's just so much stigma, and people are afraid to. And I like to use the words "come out," but it's often only addressing the LGBTQ2 plus group, and really there's so many of us that I have an invisible disability. I'm very happy to talk about that now. If anyone ever wants to have that conversation with me, I'm right there. It's out in the open. I share it with everyone. I think that for me is a way to keep it from really catching hold in my life. But there have been times where it totally was overwhelming in my life, and I wasn't able to express that to anyone. I didn't have any work people that I could talk to, romantic relationships that didn't work very successfully, family that didn't really work. So these organizations can create a place for people also to feel welcomed and supported as part of that diverse group. But I totally get the concept of them not even wanting to identify as part of that diverse group to begin with. And that makes me think, and I'm going to jot it down. I have a little book here that I have for my things my podcast guests say that I want to follow up on. But there must be a way that as supply councils, we can provide support to those organizations without them necessarily having to open up about their particular diversity. So anyway, let me just jot that down. So I really appreciate that thought. Now, but when you look at the overall concept of third-party certification, are there cons? Are there things that you would like to see changed or improved? Or outside of, obviously, the stigma that we just talked about, outside of that, are there other reasons you think a supplier might not choose certification?
I think there's potentially a perception of why would I need to prove this, which I understand. However, if we think about the bigger picture, to me, it all comes back to visibility matters and statistics matter. I am part of the LGBTQ plus community. And when I originally said that I wanted to get married, I had a family member go, just make sure that you're not getting married to just be a statistic of married people in Canada. I loved it. And I said, no, but that's the point. I want to be a statistic. Yeah. I want to add to the statistic of healthy marriages, successful queer, relationships. And so being an LGBTQ plus woman, for me, stats matter. And not everybody has the mentality. But if I was a business owner, I would want to contribute to those stats. And so from the corporate perspective, I'm looking forward to more and more businesses self-identifying and feeling like they can be proud of their background and proud to bring all of their unique qualities to the table, whatever that may be. And so that corporations can jump on board. Because I think it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. The more suppliers there are, the more corporates jump on board. The more corporates are on board and they show that they're involved and committed, the more suppliers feel like it's okay to self-identify. So it's a joint partnership, I think, between the two.
Yes, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, that's my entire, organization. Okay, I only have a small suppliers, but I need corporates. Oh, we only have a couple of corporates, but they want supply. So yeah, I'm fully aware of that chicken and egg thing. What if someone would say to you, I don't want to pay the certification fee, which I think ranges with our supply councils. And I could be wrong on this, but it's somewhere in the area of I think 450 up to 750 per year. And I know that our council allows people to pay, smaller portions if that's something that makes them more comfortable. But what would you say to someone saying, "Oh my gosh, it's $500 a year or it's $750 a year"? What are your
I would
thoughts
say
on
that
that?
that's peanuts for the value that you're getting. I mean, if you're truly in a place where you want your business to grow, you want to be working with corporates, or you want access to a market of other, small, medium to large size diverse businesses, and you want to be part of the community, to me, it's fully worth the investment of what if you're willing to put the work in, you're willing to really invest yourself into this community. I think what it can offer you back in terms of your growth, your business, your sense of community, your sense of pride as a Canadian business owner, I think that it can be really, really incredible. And so for me, I think it's fully worth the money. And genuinely too, I know that there are corporations out there that are willing to sponsor a year, or there are partnerships that are starting to happen, I think, to help encourage diverse suppliers to get certified, or at least to explore it to see if it's helpful for their business.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page there. I think that if people don't necessarily, if they see that as a barrier, they're maybe not quite ready for the supplier diversity world. It might not be time for them. But on the other hand, let's look at this on the other scale. Organizations that don't have any problem forking out 750 a year because they are so large. And I think this isn't a question that I prepared you for, but I'm sure you have an answer. There is a sort of a myth surrounding supplier diversity and diverse business owners that all the organizations are small. And they're not, they're just one owner, one employee, that kind of a thing. And so you work with a lot of diverse suppliers. What is your experience in terms of the level of revenue that these suppliers are generating in a year?
I think it depends. I think, yes, there are quite a few, and just the nature of the criteria to be 51% owned,
Yeah.
I think sometimes can create that small to medium sized business. However, I think there's a wide range. There's businesses that produce a lot of value for large organizations. I think it depends on the service or product that the organization is providing. And I think it really it's a case by case, but I think it's a slippery slope to go down if we're assuming that they're all small businesses and that none of them are capable of doing work with large corporations, because it's not the case.
Yes, I would agree. IWSCC, of course, we're the smallest of the supply councils, being the newest, but we still have organizations that are, $100 million annual revenue. And sure, that's not huge, but, I'd be happy to own a company that had that kind of revenue generated. And certainly they are capable of doing business with an organization the size of Bell.
Yeah, and I think there's organizations too that I'm learning, again, we're working on our data enrichment and our reporting processes. And I think we're learning more and more that, there are diverse suppliers that are coming to the surface that we've been doing work with for years, and they just weren't certified. So we had no idea. And then we go, oh, wait, actually, we're a loyal customer to you for multiple years. And so again, visibility is everything, but I think it's keeping an open mind to what this, I guess, supplier base looks like, because it's full of value.
So what has surprised you about the supplier diversity world as you've gotten to know it much better?
I think the thing that surprised me the most, again, I come from sport. I come from a very competitive environment. The part that surprised me was the lack of competitiveness in these spaces.
Yeah.
It's wild to be at an event where you have a variety of large corporations or organizations that are, in some cases, competitors to each other within a market, and we're sharing experiences, we're working with each other, we're collaborating on projects and programs just to make supplier diversity better. There's suppliers that I'll meet with. I'll have like a roundtable with like 6 or 7 suppliers. If 2 of them offer similar services, instead of sensing this like competitive edge, I usually find them at the end of the conversation going, hey, you do similar, maybe we should link up. We should learn from each other. We should partner up. And it's really fascinating to be in this environment where it's this collective, I guess, mission and less of a competitive space. And I think that really surprised me, but pleasantly.
Yes. Yeah, that's a common response actually, and we hear that often. Did you ever meet Karuba from RBC before he left? He would often say that supplier diversity is the only area in his entire life at RBC where all the banks get into the same room and cooperate with each other. And so, he was saying it jokingly, but the reality is that there is that layer of support there, even amongst, people that are openly competitive with each other. So yeah, I would agree. It's a comfortable place to be. And I think that's another bonus for suppliers considering certification is it's not a scary, cutthroat environment where if you say the wrong word and your presentation isn't perfect, everyone's going to laugh and boo you out of the room. Like none of that happens. And I know with our matchmaking sessions that we do virtually, we're constantly making mistakes internally and we get a lot of laughs out of it. And so it's an enjoyable experience while you're still sort of learning about each other's business. What would you like to see changed or improved in the supplier diversity world?
I think from a Canadian landscape, supplier diversity has been growing very organically, which I think is positive because it means it's authentic.
Right.
However, I am excited to be able to leverage some of the like newly evolving social progression and social pressure to kind of, I guess, like put wind in the sails of supplier diversity in Canada so that we can move faster, move better, and move bigger, I think. I think I'm looking forward to that because I think it's still very grassroots. Corporations working really, really hard, diverse suppliers working hard, the program managers working hard. But I'm excited for a little bit of like external pressure and wind to just let us, go full steam ahead.
So what would that look like to you? Like, where would that come from?
I think it would come from Government of Canada. I think it would come from like just general leaders within corporations. And I think it comes from a general awareness of supplier diversity that exists so that instead of it solely coming from supplier diversity teams or the councils, there is like a knowledge that it exists within the Canadian landscape for just people so that even employees, they're familiar with the concept and they know that they can contribute to it as it's just as commonplace as terminology as, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging when it comes to workforce. And it becomes just as known as that so that we can kind of move forward and really have like a stronger impact.
So we have the Supplier Diversity Alliance Canada, which is 4 of the supplier diversity councils that work together. And we always laugh because we'd love to have this fantastic budget so we could just do commercials everywhere because I think it would take something like that, right? Like a bunch of commercials where people start to understand. Yeah. So wouldn't that be fantastic? So anyone out there listening, if you've got some bucks for us, we
did a national campaign.
Exactly. So I know we talked about this a little bit before. I just want to ask you again because it sort of is on our list of questions and I jumped ahead and asked it to you, but ahead of time or earlier on, but tell us a bit more about if there's more you want to share about what led you to working in this type of industry. But I'm also curious to know sort of where do you want to go from here? And, that old question of where do you see yourself in 5 years? But what are your next steps? What do you want to do next?
I think it's funny in this space. I think everybody that you meet has some sort of story as to why they work in this industry.
Yes. Yeah.
Corporate or supplier, there's always a story. And I think, like for me, like I said, I did Taekwondo, and as a martial art, all of the values are centered around respect, dignity, belonging, kindness, and I remember as a kid, like being in a room full of people from all different walks of life, different experiences, different abilities, and all just working out together collectively. Even, community competitions were accessible to everybody of all ages, of all abilities, of all backgrounds. And so I would look around and go, wow, what a wonderful world to live in. And maybe I was naive or innocent or just hopeful. And as I got older, I got good at the sport, not only the martial art, but the sport. And I quickly realized this really strong sense of exclusion when I'm talking about not only women in leadership or just the diversity of people in leadership, but the diversity of the competitors or the competition categories that were available. And it was baffling to me how the martial art and the sport could be so different. However, this sport is, it's judged by people. The performance is subjectively judged, by people. And so there's kind of all this room for human error and bias and discrimination. And I think it was probably the first time in my life where I was able to truly be acutely aware of my privilege, but in the same breath feel the burden of my, closeted queer self as a woman in a male-dominated sport. And so kind of experiencing all of that, it really tore me up inside because I couldn't digest it, and I couldn't accept that was the way it was, and it was kind of my rude awakening. And so I always promised myself that in my career as I grew up, no matter what I would do, I would try my best to contribute to something bigger and try to contribute to something that was going to make the world a little more kind, I suppose. So hence my career choice. But obviously I'm very young in this space. I'm usually one of the younger people in the room at these supplier diversity events. It's no secret. And I'm just grateful to be surrounded by so many incredible people that I look up to in this space that have either, had a lot of experience in procurement and are new to supplier diversity, or that have been doing supplier diversity for such a long time. And I look up to them so much, and I hope that one day, years from now, I'll still be doing this, and there's going to be some other, young person that comes into this career, and they're going to go, "Hey, who are you?" And I'll be like, "I was you. Don't worry.
I'll take care of you, young Padawan."
Yeah, sit down, be humble, and stay patient. Buckle up. You're in for a long ride. It's a good one though.
Well, Lori Benson from EY is retiring in December, and we had a conversation yesterday. Yes. Oh, you didn't know? Yes.
Lori's one of the main people that I looked up to.
I know. So I'm get it all now because she's
a little heartbroken.
She's gonna be gone. Yeah, there's a lot of us feeling that way, and so she's very torn about the idea of the retirement. And she's done, we talked yesterday, she's done so many things in her career, all in this space. And so I think that's a fantastic goal for you, Kayla. I think that's, and I'm happy to hear that because I plan to be around for a little while too, so we can continue to work together. I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and chat with us. And I've gotten to learn more about you, and so cool. I'd love to chat a lot longer, but I realize we're hitting the end of our time. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you again. And thank you for your thoughts on the third-party certification. It is something that's very important, of course, to supply councils because we're the ones who do that. And so I really appreciate your support for it, frankly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you to, you and your team and your organization for all the work that you're doing. It's inspiring. It's important. And thank you.
All right, I'll take that. Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us today. For more supplier diversity content, of course, check us out at iwscc.ca. You can find us on YouTube, where we're slowly adding more videos, or listen in on your favorite podcast platform. So we have new episodes every 2 weeks or so, and a ton more going on as an organization. So also be sure to follow our social media for all of the updates. Thank you again for being here, and we will see you next time.